but obviously haven't started. I'm just making sure the YouTube stream
What's
works.
live? Where are we live streaming?
On YouTube Live.
Okay.
We are live on YouTube Live. That little window.
What about
there.
Twitch? There's a podcasts.
I haven't looked into Twitch at all.
There's
yet,
a podcast thing on Twitch that you can do. So I
right.
think we should just do that.
Great. More to look into. There's that. Let's see.
But I mean,
Pics are
people
gonna be
aren't.
there.
I mean, people play D&D on Twitch all the time, and they don't expect to. There's interaction in the comments, but they don't expect the people who are playing to interact with them.
Oh, no, that's not the issue. It's just learning how to stream on the darn thing.
Oh, I don't think that's a thing. I think it's like pressing a button
Yeah, well,
and then hook. And then
things
having
are
your
never
account.
that simple. All right, we need to synchronize our audio recordings. So
All right, right. Wait.
I'll do the 1, 2, 3 record. You do the 1, 2, 3
Wait,
pop.
where'd it go? Hold
Ah.
on, I lost it. Oh, your stupid picture's screwing me up.
Uh-huh. I told you.
If
You
I
can get
press
rid
this,
of that
what
in the
happens if I
settings.
press this button? Okay, your picture disappeared.
I know, but you
Are
don't
you
want to
still
keep. You're gonna every time you go to a new active window, it's going to bring the little guy back up. So
No, it doesn't.
it usually does.
It's not for me. All right,
Maybe it's
here we
different
go.
on Mac. All right, one.
wait.
Okay, 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, record. You're
You
still
say the
takes
pop.
No, you do now because I'm the one recording everything.
Oh, all right. 1, 2, 3, pop.
Pop. All right, that was very peaky. All right. Okay, so I'm starting my video
pull back up.
recording.
I was looking at questions. Look at me.
Uh-huh. Video recording's there. Okay. So yeah, in case you can't tell by now, this is behind the scenes of AV Rant as we're getting set up here. This is the behind the scenes version, but yeah, these things are looking pretty complete except for the intro and the outro and adding in the show notes, which I still do in a separate complete video version that gets posted later in the week. So yeah. If you want all that fancy stuff, keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, these things through OBS are pretty complete these days. There we go. Yeah, Tom can start whenever he wants. Tom's
When
back,
do
by
I
the way.
want? So do I don't need OBS anymore, do I?
Nope.
Move from
You just need to record your audio. And I think I've got our levels reasonably matched for the live recording. Doesn't really matter. I put in the audio later anyway.
How do you put the audio in later?
You send your audio to me and I put it in. I still edit the video thingy afterwards.
No, with them. All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot to see what time it was. A minute. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Welcome back, Tom. He's back from vacation 2 weeks ago.
I am.
By. That's right. Here he is. Hello.
I am. It was less of a vacation and more of a forced march through other states.
Okay. All right.
My wife, I don't know how this happened because never been a super. I mean, I guess when I was in high school, whatever, everybody or elementary school, middle school, your parents are always making you do sports and stuff.
Sure.
I never really felt like I was a super active, like gotta play sports kind of kid, and so there's a pickup game or something, I'm gonna go around there and do it. That was not really me. But somehow, in the midst of this marriage, we have gotten to the point where we like to go hiking, and we get mad if the hikes are wussy. Or if there's too many people there, so we look for things.
Experience.
Well, what happened? The long version. Let's do the short version. The short version of what happened is we went to New York during hurricane, whatever it was that came through here, and where I left the state.
Okay.
And my cousin's friend is a climber, and my cousin told her that we were climbers, which is true mostly. My wife doesn't really climb. And she's like, oh, if they're climbers, then they should do this hike, which ended up being what's called a scramble. A scramble is like you wish you had a rope, but you're kind of going to be fine without one because you know what you're doing. And, so it gets steep. It gets a little treacherous. There's, stuff that, a lot of people won't do. Well, my wife, while she was terrified the entire time, and I had to help her through most of it, she loved it. So now, we went to Arches National Park, which is in Utah, and we went up to the double arch, and there's a bunch of people there, and my wife just got irritated. I got irritated, but she also got irritated and said, "This sucks, and we're not going anywhere where there's going to be people anymore." So
Well,
So
that could be a challenge, but all right.
there was plenty of places because there's stuff like, oh, if you want to go here, there's a kind of sketchy part at the very beginning, but then it's a 1 mile hike in and a 1 mile hike out. Well, the kind of sketchy place at the beginning is like 90% of the people will hit it and go, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing this. But so we had a good time. We stayed with friends in Denver. We went all over Denver. We went to Boulder. We visited the campus there. It's not called UC Boulder, but it should be. It's I don't know. Anyways, they call it CU, but the Boulder University for my son, who's only going to be a sophomore, but kind of we were there, so you might as well. Beautiful campus. Absolutely phenomenal. Climbing everywhere. I'm a climber, so I love that. We did some climbing. Then we went to Moab, Utah, and spent about 3 or 4 days there, and had a fantastic time as well. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. But at the end of the end of the vacations, the kids were like, "We don't want to hike anymore." I'm like, "We're just gonna do one more. It'll be fine." We're just doing one. We literally. This is how we entered Moab. We had no place to stay. We had no lunch or food with us. So we rolled into town, and the first thing I see is a sign for climbing guides. So I pull over. We schedule a climbing trip. This is 1:30. We schedule a climbing trip for 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
We have no plate. We have no hotel. We have no food, no water or anything. So we had to scramble. And on our way out, we drove 8 hours or it's supposed to be 6, but it ended up being closer to 9, but because of weather. And construction. But we drove on our way from Moab back to Denver, which we drove straight. Before we left, before breakfast, we did another hike. So
Jeez.
We were a little crazy, but we had a good time. So welcome back to me. And welcome to all those people who betrayed me by doing the podcast with you while I was gone.
Oh,
so,
sure. Yes.
Lee, you're still dead to me.
Big thanks to Lee Overstreet. And then, of course, huge thanks to Richard Gunther last week, who special guest co-host, wanted to have on the podcast a long time and answered a whole bunch of specialized questions that were just for him, all about DIY home automation, if you haven't checked out episode number 653. So, yep, cool. We're here. It's 654. Tom's back to our regular answering home theater and AV questions.
There we go. So this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To go get your question answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there when the website works.
I know. It'll be back up August 1st. And you'll have to replace the links for the 2 episodes that I made because I'm not going to keep posting those.
I have to go get that. Let's see. Why is it so hot in here? I'm going to have to eco.
Because it's summer in Florida.
It was so nice. Denver, it cools down at night.
Mm-hmm.
You know about this.
I do.
You live in Vancouver,
yeah,
right?
So
it's
down
hot.
here.
It's 100 degrees during the day. At night, it's 73. I'm like, we get during the summer maybe 10 degrees of difference, and that's saying something. Not Celsius.
Yeah,
Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's 5. It's 95 during the day.
I am never going
87 at night. It is awful. But avrant.com. Okay. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant, where you can watch our live streams when we do them.
They're fancy now. They're all OBS-y.
They're all BS-y. Let's see. You can contact Rob directly at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. And now the camera's not offset, so I feel more normal looking at it.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com. Click on the buy us a cup of coffee link. When it works.
Yeah. When the website's up. It works when the website is up.
We want to thank, and that's a PayPal donation site. We want to thank Stefan, Brandon, Brian, and Tim for doing that this week. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, as I mentioned over the past couple of weeks, I didn't know if anybody was donating because I don't get to see those. But as promised, Tom is back. We get the names since our last donors from 3 weeks ago at this point. So Stefan, Brandon, Brian, and Tim, thank you all very much for financially supporting us via PayPal.
Sounds like I'm like embezzling from you when you say I can't see that.
Oh, I can't. It's the truth. I don't see the PayPal donations.
It's because it's my PayPal account.
I
can't make it. I pay for stuff out of that. Let's see here. And we want to thank our 83 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service where you can sign up for a monthly subscription to your content creator of choice or choices. And some people have chosen us to be one of them. So thank you to our 83 patrons.
That's right. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up, think of it as an automatic monthly donation. And thanks very much to our 83 patrons over there.
Right. We also, if you can't support us financially, that's fine. Just figure out some way to support us in another way and let us know what you did, and we will mention you. So we want to thank Andy, who let us know that he reached out to GIC for some free room acoustics advice and mentioned to them that we sent him there, and Thomas for talking us up to Gary Yakubian and the rest of the SVS team when he attended a live SVS demo event. So thank you, Andy and Thomas.
Yeah, Andy, Thomas, thanks very much for talking us up to GIC and to Gary Yakubian and the SVS team, respectively. We appreciate that.
I'm logging into EcoB. This is ridiculous. I thought I had this thing set down. My AC is a mess too. We came home and it was all broken. Yeah. So we're highly considering replacing our AC, which is a chunk of change, but I just can't deal with this anymore.
Yes. No, I'm sure you would laugh heartily because I picked up a portable mini split. All right. Usually mini split AC systems have to be installed, but there's like a portable one, comes with like a 10-foot hose. You stick one thing out on the balcony. The other one goes through the little hole in the door, and inside it goes. And I've actually run it a little bit here, and I think we've gotten up to 25 or 26 Celsius. And I've been running my AC.
That's not even that warm. That's just comfortable.
Oh, too hot for me. I like it below 20.
Yeah, so while I was in Denver and Utah, some friends of ours, they went and flew up to like Calgary and then drove to Vancouver and then took the train down to Portland and then flew back to the United States to here. So I got to see a lot of whitewater rafting and snow pictures and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool too.
That's us.
You guys have snow. I saw snow the second day I was out. We went to the top of Mount Evans, which
is over Colorado. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, over 14,000 feet. And when you're from Florida and the day that's the within 24 hours of getting to Colorado, you drive directly up to 14,000 feet. When you step out of the car, it is a fight not to pass out. I mean, I could not breathe out. I was like, my kids were like, "Oh, I could feel the difference. I go up the stairs, it feels different." I'm like, "You guys are a bunch of wusses." I stepped out of that car. I was like, "Okay, this is a real thing. This is a thing that I didn't think was real. That is clearly real." So yeah, that was something. That was really something. All right. In the news, any quick thoughts about the deluge of TV and movies coming? No, I have not paid any attention to SDCC.
Okay. Yeah, it was San Diego Comic-Con. That was last week. We didn't have any time with Richard to talk about it, even though he actually would have liked to have probably mentioned some of these things. But no, we were busy last week there. So I don't know. There were quick things that popped out to me. The Orville, which is a show that I really do enjoy, but it's moving exclusively to Hulu for season 3. It will not be broadcast on the Fox Broadcast Network. So
fine with me.
I don't know in Canada what's going to happen there because we don't have Hulu yet, although Disney said once they launch Disney Plus that they'll bring Hulu to Canada. But then again, many shows that have been available exclusively on American streaming services, in Canada, one of our stations picks it up. So it wouldn't shock me if like our Space channel picked up the Orville because it would definitely fit what they usually broadcast. So could be that type of thing. Not quite sure, but I don't know. Exclusively on Hulu. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, so I've been not paying attention to anything either because I haven't seen Endgame yet. And knowing what's coming out in Phase 4 tells me too much about what happened in Endgame.
Oh.
So I'm not paying attention.
Well, it doesn't really.
Because I don't care.
Some of these things are taking place before Endgame, and some of these...
Whatever, dude. I'm just telling you, I don't want to know anything. Endgame's coming out in like...
Well, you can't see this image I'm about to show anyway, because Marvel did talk all about their Phase 4 at a huge press conference and all that stuff, starting off with Black Widow, which I'm sure you have already heard of, and the Eternals, Angelina Jolie is going to be in that, so that was a thing.
I don't remember who the Eternals are.
Aren't they like the elder gods of the Marvel Universe or some such? I don't really know.
Well, there's Eternity, which is a personification of the universe, but there's I don't remember. I've tried to like stay up on my comic book mythos, but it's just there's too many. There is too much. I think I'm getting the Eternals and the New Gods, which is a DC thing.
Well, yeah, New Gods is DC.
Yeah, mixed up in my head. So I have to go look up what the Eternals are again.
I'm not quite sure. Well, yeah, if nothing else, will spur you to do that. But there were a ton of Disney Plus shows mentioned, and they mentioned them as being part of Phase 4. So unlike the Netflix Marvel shows, which they seem to have completely disavowed at this point as ever
no
having
doubt.
existed, especially
Well, they're going to have that guy from Luke Cage play.
That's right. Mahershala Ali is
Blade.
now going to be Blade. So he was
I don't
already.
know if I see that, dude. I
He's
love
such a
that
good
guy's
actor.
He's a great actor. He's got a great voice, but I mean,
I don't
Wesley
have any
Snipes,
doubts. He can be
I mean,
Blade.
He can be Blade fine. And you know what? When people are like, "Oh, we need to bring back Wesley Snipes," dude, if you heard the story, have you read anything about the stories about what happened on Blade 3, the set of Blade 3? Wesley Snipes was out of freaking control. That's why he's barely in that movie. He locked himself in a drug-fueled whatever in his trailer and wouldn't come out and was threatening the director and had it was insane. The fact that they don't have Wesley Snipes in there is like, well, of course. I mean, I loved him in the first 2 movies. The third movie was dumpster fire, but yeah, I absolutely 100% cannot blame anybody from saying, "Oh, I'm working with Wesley Snipes" after that.
No kidding. So looking forward to so like Natalie Portman didn't want to have anything to do with the Marvel movies, but they've enticed her back because she will become Mighty Thor as Jane Foster did.
See, I feel like that's a spoiler.
That's not a spoiler.
I feel like that tells me something about the Avengers.
Then you're wrong.
Okay, that's good. I want to be wrong. Don't spoil me.
But she'll be there.
And anybody who's like, "Oh, he's being ridiculous," I know. I know I'm being ridiculous. I refuse to go to the movie theaters to see movies anymore. I'm sorry. I didn't pay. I mean, get all this stuff in this room and set it up and spend all the time and effort to do this, to go and to watch somebody look at their Facebook feed while I'm watching a movie, or talk or explain the history of every single character as they come on screen, or have kids doing whatever. And most of the kids that are bugging me are my kids.
Yes.
And at least here I can stop the movie and say, "Get out," and then rewind it and see what I missed.
You sure can. Anyway, that's why we do home theater. Yeah. Anyway, Kevin Feige was up there on stage, and he specifically mentioned afterwards, he's like, "I didn't even have time to tell you about, well, mutants coming to the Marvel Universe and the Fantastic Four, but that'll be after Phase 4. So, yep, that's obviously all happening with Disney's acquisition of Fox and getting the rights back to those characters. So there it is. Some interesting, fun stuff coming to Marvel's Phase 4. Yeah. There was also a ton of Star Trek news. They're like making a bunch of
like Star Wars is making all the money.
That's
Can't
right.
we have some of the money?
Marvel's making all the money. Let's make some. It's all going to be on CBS All Access, streaming exclusively. So that's the home of Star Trek now. But the main thing is that the Picard trailer looked very good, and so there you go. That's really all I cared about.
The Alfred trailer from the Pennywise looks awesome.
Pennyworth.
Pennyworth, whatever. Pennywise.
He is not it. He's
also
not a clown.
A good TV series to watch. Anyway,
good times.
How he turned to the dark side. Dude, he's a clown. He was always dark. All right, so do you really want some Sonos speakers at IKEA prices? They've teamed up with the new IKEA Symfonisk.
Yeah, Symphonic. I don't know. Maybe I transpose that S and K. Symphonics. Is it Symphonics?
Symphonisk.
I don't know.
It's just hard to get your...
What is it? No, it's ISK. It is SK. I typed that correctly. I was not wrong.
Yeah, that's what it says here.
That's messed up.
Anyways, the IKEA Symphonisk speakers, which will be available August 1st, the $99, when the website goes back live, by the way, the $99 IKEA bookshelf speakers, I'm not going to pronounce anymore because it's stupid.
Yeah,
it's the least expensive Sonos speaker ever. You can wall mount it and also mount it horizontally. Use it as a little shelf. You could use any speaker as a shelf if you try hard enough, but whatever. They say it can hold about 6.5 pounds. Early reviews say it doesn't sound all that great. Then there's a $180 lamp. It's basically a Sonos Play 1 speaker inside, and the early reviews say it sounds pretty good. So, for a lamp, as lamps go.
That's right. Now the Sonos Play 1 is pretty decent, so that's
So okay, so the lamp in general, like what do you use a lamp for? And the only time I ever use a lamp is for reading. So do I want music playing while I'm reading? Is the real question. I mean, it also makes it easier to put speakers around a room without having to.
Well, that's just it. If you got them on end tables on either side of your couch, and Sonos does have the thing that allows you to use a pair of wireless speakers as your surrounds when mated to one of their sound
we should
bars.
Keep in mind for $180, that ain't bad.
That's not too bad. Although, of course, you would need two of them. So, but
Well,
it is also
two.
a lamp, so you're not getting nothing.
And it also blends in well with your decor, which
that's the main.
We have people that are really super concerned about that. We keep that in the back of our minds as an option. Like, I can't have anything that looks like a speaker. I'm like, well, can you have something that looks like a lamp? And then you have to also buy the rest of it as Sonos as well, and it's all going to be super expensive.
They're locking you in, but
what you do is you say, here's how I can do it to make it look like lamps. It's going to cost us $5,000. Or I can make it look like speakers, and it's going to cost me $700. So which one do you want, honey? All right, let's get to the questions because we got a lot of them. Rusty has always made do with a living room setup, but now he finally gets to use his basement. He doesn't get a fully dedicated theater room, though. It's a large open space. It's 60 feet long, 60 feet long.
It's the whole basement, that sounds like.
That's what it sounds like to me, yeah. I mean, it's got to have some support columns in there someplace, but
I would
whatever.
imagine.
60 feet long, 18 feet wide, and 8 feet high in total. It's about 9,000 cubic feet.
That's right.
The theater is in the middle. So the left is an office and the right is his kids' play area. So he's using the 18-foot dimension as a front to back distance. He sits 6 feet off the back wall and 12 feet from the front wall. Each side wall is 30 feet away. I mean, from the middle. It's probably 29 feet away. But whatever.
From the ear.
From your shoulder. So I don't know how wide this dude is. He could be extra. All right. At the moment, he's using a BIC F12 subwoofer, and it's sorely lacking. Yes, the BIC F12 subwoofer was never meant to be put in a 9,000 cubic.
It's a nice little decent sub, but not for 9,000 cubic feet. Yes, it is lacking.
So he has it in mind that he'd like a pair of subs capable of hitting full reference volume, and there is actually space right in the middle of the 60-foot walls where large subwoofers could go. And children and office equipment could be bounced.
Middle of the front wall, middle of the back wall. It's just that the side walls are 30 feet away to either side. A little unusual, but still good placement.
Yeah. So what would be the best value, he asks? Would the dual SHU or HSU VTF-15H Mark II get the job done, or does he need a larger, more expensive subwoofer? Well, I don't know if you need more expensive because there's cheaper, larger subs that exist in the world.
Right.
But I think you need bigger than this.
Although not tremendously so.
Yeah. So I just saw something from, I think it was Rhythmic. It was like an 18-inch driver in the middle of a box. And there was like a goodly amount of space on either side of that driver. Yeah. And then it was very tall, like at least as tall as like a dining room table, I would think. Look at it with like 2 or 3 ports at the bottom of this thing. I'm like, that's a massive sub, and that could go in here.
It could do it. I mean, I'm looking for the least expensive that can just do what he's asking, and I'm truly. What I'm going to recommend is truly the just asking, and actually, you probably don't even need it, but he said full reference volume, and now we got to keep in mind that full reference volume in the LFE, the dedicated low-frequency effects channel, while the signal could request as much as 115 dB peaks, full reference volume literally means just above 110, like anything above 110 is considered full reference volume in that low-frequency effects channel. So, going strictly by the numbers, the Shure VTF-15H Mark II. Now, an interesting thing in this room is that he actually has a dimension, 60 feet, so large, that he is not getting room gain in that dimension, even at 20 hertz.
Right.
It's one of the very few rooms
55 feet is a 20 hertz.
55 to 56 feet. That's 20 hertz. So that one of the few rooms we've come across where he is genuinely not getting any room gain in that dimension. Now, you take any sub from the anechoic measurement and put it in any room that isn't 60 feet in every dimension, and you automatically get 3 decibels of gain. And then you put it up against a wall or 2 walls, and you get 3 decibels of gain, usually for each wall that you put it against. But in his room, he wouldn't. At most, he would get an additional 3 decibels of gain by putting it in, well, and even in a corner, he would only get, in his particular room, an additional, so 6 total, 1 from the ceiling floor and 1 from the front to back. So that means we need a sub that anechoically can truly play 110 decibels.
Right.
And his seating distance is enough that I'm not really worrying about, distance measurements. The CTA 2010 measurements are done at 2 meters. So if you can hit anechoically 110 decibels at 2 meters, I consider that fine. Well, the Shure VTF 15H will hit 109, 108.9 if we're really skimming it. And so technically speaking, it won't get you what you want, but for just $100 more, which I don't think is insanely more expensive, Power Sound Audio's V1510, so not their down-firing 15-incher, but their front-firing one, which is a little bit bigger than their down-firing one, and you can get a pair of those for $2,200 shipping included. Now, it is 24 inches, that's the height, I think? I think it's 24 inches high, 17 inches wide, and 25 inches deep. This is a large box, but it's about the smallest that can actually get you full reference volume. Now, if you were saying, I want 115 decibels, and just don't. You got kids potentially beside you. This is like, you don't need 115. But then you're looking at, something like the 18-incher that Tom is talking about. But this is the least expensive pair of subs that you can get that will genuinely hit full reference volume.
You can get a pair for $2,200?
A pair for $2,200.
That's pretty cheap. That 18-incher I'm looking at, I think it's $17.99 by itself.
That's right. Yeah, because they're $11.50 each, but if you pair them up, they give you a $100 discount over at Power Sound Audio. And shipping is included. So given that the Shure VTF 15H Mark IIs would have cost you $2,100 after shipping for a pair of them, you spend the extra $100 and you get the genuine full reference volume.
I'm trying to see what the how loud it can get.
Yeah, if you go to the performance tab there.
I'm looking at it.
Now, they list their CTA 2010 measurements reference to 1 meter. So you have to subtract 9 decibels from what they're listing there. But
I'm looking at the rhythmic.
The rhythmic.
It's an FV18.
Yes, the FV18.
It's stupid.
That is their model. They don't list CTA 2010 measurements over
They
at
don't.
Rhythmic.
I'm looking for it. It's not here.
So you'd have to go over to a database, and I'm not sure if he's measured that one yet. But, in any case, pretty darn close to that Shure price tag, and it'll actually get you there to full reference volume.
All right, so he's using a 2.1 setup for the moment, but he'd like a full Atmos configuration eventually. Where should he put his side surround speakers? Hey, how do you feel about lamps?
Not for this.
No. Speakers on stands would end up being in the walkways, going to the office and the kids' play area, so those are pretty much a no-go. He could theoretically put speakers on the actual side walls, 30 feet to either side. 29 technically, but whatever. But that seems a bit nuts. Could he put them on the ceiling? He could put them on the ceiling, but would that sound okay when he also wants Atmos speakers? What's the best solution? Okay, so there's really no problem with putting them on the side walls. They are far away.
Right.
That is kind of the issue, but you will by definition get a very diffuse sound. And
Yes. I don't know. I wasn't thinking that as my first choice, because that's way over there. You need some efficient speakers and probably some beefy amps to get you 30
That's right.
feet.
That would be the real issue here. Is you would need some sort of horn-loaded clip, or one of those compression drivers,
JTR or something.
Yeah, something like that to do it. You're sitting 6 feet off the back wall.
That's right.
And, I know that we always say, where you want to put them is to your sides, just a little bit to your sides and a little bit up, which would be optimal.
Sure.
If you want to have Atmos someday, I think your only option is to really put them behind you.
On your back wall.
Sides.
And you certainly have the width of your room that you can put them quite far to your sides on the back wall. In fact, you could do that enough that you're still within Dolby spec.
Right.
Because even if you're thinking that you want surround back speakers, meaning that your surround speakers, your side surround speakers, Dolby would have you put those between 90 and 110 degrees behind you. Well, 110 degrees behind you would have them 16 and a half feet to your left and 16 and a half feet to your right on your back wall. I mean, theoretically, I'm looking at a 60 foot long room. That seems like you could actually do that. And if you decide that instead of having surround back speakers, you're just going to stick to a 5 speaker system, which only 6 feet behind you, definitely you could do. There, you could have your surround speakers, like Dolby would have them at 120 degrees. You could have them at as much as 135 degrees. And that's still okay within a 5 5.1 as the base layer system.
Right.
And that means they could be a mere 10 feet to your left and 10 feet to your right on your back wall. And that seems entirely doable to me, because, I mean, even if this room is perfectly divided into thirds, 20 feet for the office, 20 feet for your theater, 20 feet for the kids' playroom, that's 20 feet. They're on the borders of your theater
towards
area.
your couch, though.
Oh, at that point, yes, definitely. Yeah. But I don't really see a reason.
Times I will say that about surround speakers.
Right.
Usually surround speakers, no matter what surround backs, we say just point them straight in from the wall.
So that
you're
off axis from them.
But in this case, you're going to be sitting so far away. I mean, 10 feet is not so far away.
Yeah, well, 10 feet to your sides and 6 feet behind you. So that's some distance.
That's some distance there. So, and then if you think about it, there'd be speakers out wide. And then if you wanted to go surround backs, you'd put them right off the ends of your couches, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and then there would still be enough separation. I mean, a lot of times we're talking about...
Yeah, you still could,
Dolby Atmos speakers that are, in line, surround... top middles are kind of in line with your surrounds, and they're usually, if we say they're 5 feet of difference, that's usually enough. Sometimes it's less than that. So I think you'd be fine doing it that way.
I would put
really want to surround backs.
Yeah, I would put your surround speakers on your back wall for sure. If you spread them quite wide apart, then surround backs could still make sense.
Right. And just remember, though, that this is going to be, you're looking at more than 12. If you put them 10 feet apart, then you got 6 feet. If you think of whatever the long angle is, hypotenuse, is that what it is? I can't remember. That's going to be more than 12 feet. So, you're looking at, you want a speaker that's fairly efficient if you can get it. And, just realize that if you go for through the calibration and your receiver sets the surrounds at plus 12,
right,
you need an amp.
Yes,
basically, it basically is what that means, is that you need an amp. It's just telling you straight up that's what you need. All right, Stefan has a Marantz SR7012. He's using it to power 7 speakers in his 15.5 by 16.5 foot room. A couple weeks ago, we told several people that they had setups where they could benefit from adding separate amps. I go away for 2 weeks, and you guys are recommending amps around here?
It's what happened.
Don't give me that crap.
Somebody was sitting like 15 feet away.
We don't do amps. We don't recommend amps. It's not what we do.
When the math says that it's time to have one, then there it is. I don't lie.
15.5 by 16.5 foot room. Does he need an amp? No.
Almost certainly not. Unless you have really inefficient speakers and you have them plastered against your front wall and you are plastered against your back wall.
Yeah. That's almost that you would really on walls and you sit on wall, and that's not the same wall.
And even then, you'd still need quite inefficient speakers to get you to the point where mathematically you would need a separate amp. No, this room size, I can't imagine you're sitting more than 12 feet away. I mean, because your speakers have some depth to them. They're probably not plastered right against the front wall. So they're, let's say, 2 feet off the front wall and you're 2 feet off the back wall. I mean, at a minimum, that's 12 feet in this room that you are from your speaker. You don't need an amp.
No. So he asked, could we explain what separates are really about? It's just very similar to a convertible car when you're a middle-aged man. That's what separates are about for 99% of the people who own them. That I will say that, and I feel confident with that number. 99% of the people in the home theater game who own separates own them because it is bling and it makes it feel good.
Well, I mean, I'm sure, I have zero doubt if he's read any websites or home theater magazines or audio magazines or whatever, that of course somebody somewhere has been touting how amazing separates are, how of course if you can afford it, you would get separate. Why would you go with an all-in-one box that tries to do so many things? It can't possibly do it as well as
like
individual
your car can't
boxes.
drive and do the radio at the same time. Clearly, if we could find a car that didn't have a radio, it would go faster because the radio is the problem there. It has nothing to do with the engine whatsoever.
So, I mean, to give you some numbers to go by, Stefan, any reasonable speakers that have specifications listed for them by a manufacturer that has any idea what they're doing, you'll see an efficiency or a sensitivity spec.
Right.
And I mean, we could go way down into the weeds of describing all this stuff, but I'm not going to. You just look at that number and you're going to see something like around 86 decibels, or maybe if they're efficient, maybe over 90 or something like that. But 86, 87, 89.
86.
Those
86. is very reasonable number to see with the 8 ohm speaker.
Exactly. Very, very common to see. And that number is referring to almost always 1 watt of power being fed into those speakers, with the microphone or the listener being 1 meter away, about 3 feet away. All right. So every time you double your distance from 1 meter to 2 meter, or from 2 meter to 4 meter, and that's usually about where we stop because most people aren't sitting more than 15 feet away. Maybe you are, but that's pretty typical for a home. So 1 to 2 or 2 to 4, every time you double that distance in an actual room, if you were outside with no walls around you, you would subtract 6 decibels for every doubling of distance from that number. But in a real room, I usually say to subtract 4, and that's probably conservative. But that's usually about where you are, is subtract about 4. So let's say you're sitting a full 4 meters away. You subtract 8 decibels from that. Maybe you're at 78 decibels with 1 watt at this point. 1 watt of power into that speaker is giving you about 78 decibels of output from a standard 86 decibel per 1 watt per 1 meter speaker. Amplifier power, every time you double the amplifier power, so from 1 watt to 2 watts or 2 watts to 4 watts, you get 3 decibels more output. So you can use that. The other quick shorthand to quickly get the number out is every time you multiply the number of watts by 10, so from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 100, the decibel number will go up by 10. That's easy to remember. 10 times as many watts gives you 10 more decibels because it is a logarithmic scale. That's exactly how that would go. So you can very quickly figure out how many watts you actually need to hit whatever given decibel level you want with those speakers from whatever distance you're sitting. And that's why we're saying you're at 12 feet almost certainly or closer. So you're probably closer to 2 meters than you are to 4 meters, but you're probably right around 3 meters. That's where most people are sitting. So right around 3 meters. You've probably subtracted somewhere in the range of 6 decibels from that efficiency and sensitivity scale that we're looking at. So with 1 watt, you're probably getting at least about 80 decibels out of that thing. And that means with 100 watts of power, you're hitting 100 decibels. All right? That's kind of the math we're looking at here. And then you double that to 200 watt peaks and you're at 103. You're basically at full reference volume at that point. So your AV receiver is almost certainly rated at 100 watts per channel. And these days, if you know, that's pretty reasonable. AudioHawks is measuring most of the AV receivers that we're talking about, and they actually do deliver that. And not only that, if you measure what they can burst their power at for a short amount of time into any one given channel, they're often hitting sometimes 300 watts these days. That's really not uncommon for that really short little peak burst.
So the people who need external amplification, and of the people who need it, most of the time they need it because they have made some very esoteric speaker choices.
Or they're sitting very far away.
Yeah. So what happens is you end up with something like a Martin Logan speaker or another type of electrostack, which dips into very low ohmage. And what this means is that it is drawing an immense amount of power.
Yeah.
But only at certain frequencies, and sometimes only for a very short period of time.
But it still might be legitimately requesting 1,000 or 1,200 watts from an amplifier channel for a brief amount of time at a certain frequency. But it can legitimately happen with certain speakers, at which point an AV receiver just can't deliver that.
That's right. So, it's so rare that that's the case, though. It's so rare that that's the case. I've been in probably 3 people's homes who own Martin Logan speakers.
Sure.
I have never seen anybody that sat further away than maybe 10 feet from Martin Logan speakers, which means that as long as they're not trying to throw a rave in that house, most of the time they don't even need the amplifier. They're sitting close enough that if they're just watching TV, which most of these people are doing, or listening to music,
full reference volume.
Right, not at full reference volume. They're watching TV or listening to music because almost in many cases it's somebody who's been. It's not a dedicated theater. It's not a dedicated theater room. So they are, they have common walls and stuff. So they're not trying to blast it. Most of the time, they don't even need amps. Could they use it? Yeah, they could. But most of them don't need it.
So Stefan, I'm going strictly by the objective numbers, and there absolutely are cases where separates are mathematically required. If you're like, this is the level I want to hit, here's how far away I sit, here are the speakers that I use, and this is the way it's all going to go, and you're like, yep, you legitimately need a more powerful separate amp. That can totally be the case, but Most of the time it isn't, and this notion that somehow separates are just inherently better than a good AV receiver, no, that is
it's not the case.
The blind listening tests tell us otherwise.
Well, all of us do have separates to an extent because we all have subwoofers, and that subwoofer has its own
its
amplifier
own separate
in it.
amp.
And that is by definition a separate amp, which is what separates are referring to. So we all have separates because the subwoofer legitimately needs a ton of power that you don't want to have to provide from your AV receiver.
True.
That's why we buy subwoofers with amps in them. It used to be, and it was not common, but there was cases like SVS used to offer, just the sub and no amp. And you could buy the amp separately, or you could buy the amp from them.
Yeah, Shu did that too for a while.
Yep. So, I mean, but you legitimately do not want to drive your subwoofer from your receiver because your receiver doesn't have the power. There you go. Infinite Gary, we keep hearing about ATSC 3.0, and that is nearly here. We know that the 2020 Summer Olympics will have footage shot and broadcast in 8K in Japan. So Gary's expecting that there's at least a decent chance that we'll get some 4K ATSC 3.0 broadcasts in North America, and hopefully some TVs with ATSC 3.0 tuners built in to go along with them.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know, dude.
They do keep saying it's coming. I don't know. They seem to be a little behind schedule.
I'm not saying it's not possible, and I would. I'm just saying that it's. I have a feeling. Okay, if I was a betting man, I had to place a bet on it right now. There's going to be a TV from Sony that does it.
Sure.
And that'll be like it. You know what I mean? That you'll have to buy that TV in order to see the 4K. Or whatever, or the 8K or whatever. So regardless, the video side of things seem pretty well set, whether it's a TV with an ATSC 3.0 tuner built in or an external box, we'll be getting a 4K broadcast at some point. But what about the audio side of things? Will new AV receivers be needed? Is there an entirely new immersive audio format that will require new audio decoders? He's assuming a TV with an ATSC 3.0 tuner built in will have some way of playing audio with its own built-in speakers. I mean, I don't see why not.
Right, yeah.
But what about sending the audio out to the AVR? Do we expect an external box might have a better chance of converting the new audio format to our current AV receivers so that our current AV receivers can handle it? Would there be any good reason to buy a new TV with that the new tuner built in? I mean, it's just metadata, dude. I mean, there's really the if they go for immersive sound, it's just metadata. So unlike other formats that are out there, that have come along where you went from, Dolby Digital and DTS to True HD and Master Audio, which is like a lot more bandwidth and a lot of other stuff. Metadata is not quite the same thing. I feel like that's something that they can just shove onto what they currently have, and we've seen that happen before. Stop. Where they've added metadata to, a lossy stream. Mm-hmm. And which we get over streaming services right now, and no one had to change the receiver in order. No, I mean, some of us did, but
to actually get the newest audio, but you could still play it back on an older receiver with a legacy format, essentially. Yeah. So I mean, there are actually new audio formats, entirely new codecs for ATSC 3.0. Now, in North America, they've already said they will be using Dolby's AC4. So now with HD TV broadcast ATSC 1.0, we have Dolby Digital, and that is called AC3 behind the scenes. So this is now AC4 audio, and Dolby is touting that it's even more efficient, that it does have these new abilities that they can't add to AC3 or even AC3E, AC3 Enhanced, which is Dolby Digital Plus. So this is an entirely new codec that they're talking about with AC4. There's also MPEG-H, which seems to be what most of Asia and Europe is leaning toward, but North America has said we're for sure using AC4, MPEG-H might be optional or something like that. So Gary, we know, is in North America. We'll focus on that for the moment because Dolby has already sort of talked about this. They have a white paper going all the way back to 2016, actually. But they specifically have a section in that white paper that is talking about what will you do with a current generation AVR. They're specifically talking about one that can already decode Atmos. Because if you already have an Atmos AV receiver, there shouldn't be a reason why you have to buy a whole new AV receiver. Now, there is going to need to be an AC4 decoder somewhere in the signal chain that might be built directly into the television, and you just plug your antenna straight into your TV, which has its built-in ATSC 3.0 tuner, and the TV has an AC4 decoder built into it, or it could be an external box so that you don't have to buy a new television. You have an external box that connects to your antenna, and that has the AC4 decoder in it. And what Dolby's plan is, okay, so you got this AC4 decoder. Like any decoder, it's going to decode the AC4 audio into PCM. And once it is PCM, as long as you put something else inside of that box or something inside of that TV, you can re-encode that PCM into just about anything you want. Now,
right back to Atmos again.
Yeah, so I mean, you could put it into a Dolby Digital Plus with Atmos extension, and that's how it comes out. But what they're suggesting is actually leave it as PCM, but do what they call the Dolby MAT format, the MAT, which stands for Metadata Enhanced Audio Transmission. That's actually what the Apple TV 4K puts out when it's doing Atmos, because it is decoding, say, Netflix Atmos audio inside the Apple TV 4K right now, turns it into PCM, but then outputs PCM Dolby MAT, Metadata Enhanced Audio Transmission, and so it's PCM audio plus metadata. That's what gets sent to your current Atmos AV receiver, and it can decode that. So we are talking about either the TV itself or the box has to have the AC4 decoder in it and this Dolby MAT formatter in it.
So it's not a firmware. We can't firmware update our AV receivers to have this decoder?
No, because it is an entirely new decoder. So you'd need new chips. So there probably will be new AV receivers at some point with AC4 decoders built in. I'm sure they will come up with their own new brand name for it. Maybe, I don't know, Ultra HD audio or something from Dolby, but whatever it's going to be, there probably will be a new brand name for it. I mean, they love to put new decoders into receivers because it gets you to buy a new receiver.
Sticker on the front of your receiver is
absolutely
what they want to do.
But I mean, so will televisions with built-in ATSC 3.0 tuners have AC4 decoders? Yes, they will definitely have AC4 decoders, because even to play it out of their own built-in speakers, they'll have to have an AC4 decoder. So that much we're certain of. But will it then have a formatter to output it to your AV receiver, and how would it get there? It would have to get there via eARC. It would have to get there via the enhanced audio return channel, because you need that kind of bandwidth for 7 channels of PCM plus metadata. So it would have to be eARC. So if your current AV receiver, you might have an Atmos receiver that doesn't have eARC, so that much you would have to upgrade if you're using the TV built in. But we don't know for sure that every TV is going to have a Dolby MAT formatter built into it. They might choose to just decode it, and then if you're outputting it from the TV, maybe they just run it through a vanilla 5.1 Dolby Digital encoder. That would be the cheapest and easiest thing for them to do, and make it highly compatible with just about anything that exists.
That makes the most sense,
I
to be
can
honest
see it.
with you.
So my guess is that
you just use your surround up mixer to put it over your head anyways.
So my guess is that an external box probably will be our best chance. I'm sure someone will output an ATSC 3.0 external tuner box that will output PCM Dolby MAT. Somebody will.
Yeah. All right, Brandon. 2 weeks ago, Brandon mentioned how he's comparing a pair of Ascend Sierra towers to his Golden Ear Triton 2 towers. He's using his Marantz SR7011 receiver to power them, sitting 13 feet away. And he said that when he really cranks up the volume, both pair of speakers seem to suffer and get shouty. Sounds like my kids. So he asked if a separate amp might help. Rob said it's possible. But there's no need to go crazy. And then an outlaw. Dude, I leave for 2 weeks and everybody's getting amp suggestions around here. What's going on with you?
This is one of the ones that we were referring to. So this is the same. We haven't gone afield. This is one of the ones.
That's what I just said. There were multiple amp suggestions.
You said everyone. That's exaggerating.
I don't know. I didn't listen to the podcast.
I know.
So probably everyone then, because you could say anything and I would have to believe it since I didn't listen. And I'm not gonna. All right. He said there's no need to go crazy, and that an Outlaw Model 5000 would basically have the perfect amount of power for a setup. Brandon is only really concerned with potentially powering his front 3 speakers with an external amp. He looked up reviews and measurements and knows that the Outlaw Model 5000 is able to output more power when it's only driving 2 versus when it's driving all 5. Would there also be an increase in an output in driving 3 versus 5? I mean, there's more available power. So, yeah.
It is a single power supply. So like the measurements that Audioholics did, they looked at what is the maximum power that can come out of one channel, like just basically what is the output transistor limit of any of the given channels in this amplifier, and what's the maximum that can come out of there, and then how much can it do when it's driving 2 channels, how much can it do when it's driving all 5 channels equally. So yes, there is more wattage available from the shared power supply if you're only driving 2 instead of 5, and even more if you're only driving 1 instead of 5. Well, when we're listening to actual program content, it's exceedingly rare that all 5 channels are requesting maximum power simultaneously.
Yeah.
Sounds are typically moving around, and typically getting different sounds out of different speakers. And so, I mean, the short answer is yes, 3 channels will most likely have more power available than 5.
Well, they will definitely have more power available than 5, but it's so rare that it's going to become an issue.
Yeah.
Where if you had just driven the 3, they would have gotten all the power they asked for. Whereas in a 5.1 setup or a 5 speaker setup, when the 3 are asking for power and the 2 surrounds are also asking for power, the 2 surrounds are not asking for so much power that it is detracting from what the 3 are getting.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Audioholic measurement on that, they're like, yeah, this is one of those amps out there where it quite easily exceeds its rated power, whether that's sustained into all 5 channels simultaneously or its peak power that they listed. Like, no, it exceeds it. And that's why I'm like, that is all you need. Mathematically, you could legitimately have a momentary peak that's requesting as much as 400 watts in the speakers that he's using from the distance that he's sitting away. And an AV receiver, the one that he has, can't quite get there. It tops out, it was measured by Audioholics, it tops out at like, 320 or 330 watts or something like that. And of course, that's into one speaker, and that was with fairly high distortion figures. And that might be the shouty, little bit screechy type of sound. You're starting to get into that, I'm requesting this much power, and it's really not, and you're getting some fairly high distortion. The Outlaw 5000 can do it with aplomb, and that's why I said it's all you need.
So would a monolith Monoprice 3 be a better choice if you only... See? This is why we don't recommend amps around here.
I know. Yep.
If he only wants to power his front 3 speakers, what if you were going for a B stock Monolith 3, that would be that much more expensive than the Outlaw Model 5000. You see? It's a rabbit hole.
It sure is. It's so easy to tumble down. Yep.
No, you don't need it. Okay. And I did you guys already dress? Because I didn't listen to the podcast. So did you dress the room? Is his room treated in good? Because
gosh, now I can't recall. Although for speakers, it's not super important because we're mostly concerned about the distance and the direct sound.
Yeah, but the turning up loud, if he's getting reflections around the room, could be adding to what he's. It's when we say, when you turn up loud and it sounds bad, we think distortion, but it could be reflections as well. So
it can, yes.
If your room is bare and untreated, you don't need to be looking at amps first. You need to be looking at
fairly certain Brandon mentioned that he does have acoustic treatments. Yeah. I don't 100% on that, but I'm fairly certain.
You don't need a bigger amp with 3 channels only.
Regardless, the answer remains the same. You do not require it. Now, I mentioned him by email. I say if you're like, I'm gonna buy this thing whether you say to or not, and I just want justification for it. Well, the justification I could possibly offer to you is that the Monolith 3 does have an even lower noise floor than the Outlaw Model 5000.
He's sitting 13 feet away from this thing. How low does noise floor have to be? I mean, it's not like sitting right up on the thing.
But I mean, the measurements are there. It has an even lower noise floor. It has an even better signal to noise ratio than the Outlaw 5000. There's no way I can justify it to you in terms of watts because you just do not need. I mean, the Monolith 3 is more powerful, but you just do not need them. But if you need justification, I would put it in terms of the signal to noise ratio and the noise floor, which 13 feet away you also do not need. So, no. Get the Model 5000. It's less expensive. That's the one you need. But I know he's already going to go for the Monolith 3.
Stop saying need. He doesn't need it. It's the one he wants. I mean, we don't know that
mathematically speaking, it gets there.
So we have occasionally talked about using 6 Atmos speakers, top fronts, top rears, and top middles in between. But is there really any benefit? Wouldn't top fronts and top rears create a phantom top middles? Yes, that's the whole point.
That's the idea.
But from people who have installed stupid numbers of speakers over their heads, a lot of them agree that you don't really need all those speakers overhead, that there's a law of diminishing returns and it comes after about 2. But you could add another pair and have the top middles be their own separate channel. I think this makes, when we start looking at this many speakers over your head, you need to start thinking about this less as a single row of seats, normal home theater,
right,
and start thinking about multiple rows. And I'm not talking 2, I'm talking more. Multiple rows of seats, very large theaters. That's where this sort of stuff, the Trinovs and stuff like that, really start to make sense. Before that, it's just sort of overkill. And by sort of, I mean it is 100% overkill.
I mean, for the people who've tried it and have said, yeah, I think 6 is like optimal, even with just one row, it's because we don't stereo image very well anywhere except for in front of us at about ear level. Once you start asking us to stereo image front to back or up and down, that's just not the way our ears are oriented. I mean, it's the reason why when you say listen really hard for where something's coming from, we naturally cock our head at an angle a bit down and to the side. We try to get our ears separated in all 3 axes, but we don't watch a movie with our head cocked like that, so we don't have very good stereo imaging front to back. So the idea that top middles will phantom directly above your head, we're not super good at doing that. If our ears were oriented differently on our head, we would be better at it, but that's just not the way human physiology is. So that's the reason some people say if you really want to notice that something is directly above you, even if you have top fronts and top rears already, they don't really give you that perfect top middle phantom image. That's not the speaker's fault. That's our head and ears fault.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, if you have physical speakers there, you can really get that sense that something is directly above you and then something's above and in front and something's above and behind. I mean, that's the reason why if you have 4 overhead, sometimes we say, yeah, if you're the type of person who really wants to notice it directly overhead, maybe go for top middles and front heights instead of top fronts and top rears, because then you do have a pair of speakers directly above you and then another pair in front of you. You still get some front to back movement, but you have those 2 right above you if you're the type of person who wants to really notice it.
Right. But it's Atmos. It's kind of pointless. Don't really. You're not really getting a whole lot. It's Atmos. It's just another reason to make you buy speakers. Brandon, what do max CLL and max fall mean? Do these figures affect the HDR10 tone curve that a given display would apply? I don't know what any of that stuff is.
All right, so max CLL, so it stands for maximum content light level. So that's the CLL, content light level. And max FALL is maximum frame average light level. So the FALL is frame average light level. So this is part of the metadata in an HDR10, or in fact any HDR signal has this metadata that's into it. And they also have little bits of metadata that indicate what mastering display was used. So it'll be like this was a 1000 nit mastering display or a 4000 nit mastering display.
Right.
That information will also be in there.
So it tells the TV what the range is.
Yeah, so it tells the TV this is the display that was used to master this content. And then, so let's say you used a 4000 nit mastering display, the Dolby Pulsar, but you mastered it so that the maximum content level, literally the single brightest pixel anywhere in the entire movie, maybe it was 1300 nits, right? So you never use the full 4000 nits of the mastering display that you're using, but you went above what a 1000 nit mastering display could do, and the single brightest pixel in the whole movie hit 1300 nits, so that would be your max CLL level. Then your maximum frame average light level would be, okay, what is the brightest entire screen? That's what it's talking about, frame average, right? But what's the brightest one? And maybe it's, 600 nits or something like that. That could be quite common. So would that affect what tone mapping your given display does? Well, it depends, because some manufacturers only pay attention to the mastering display metadata. They ignore max CLL and max FALL. They only look at, was this a 1000 nit or a 4000 nit mastering display, and that's all they use to adjust their tone curve. Others only look at max CLL and nothing else, and some only look at max FALL or nothing else. So it depends is unfortunately the answer. Can't really tell you exactly, because even manufacturer from model to model, sometimes they change their mind, or model year to model year. Vincent T.O. over at HDTV Test, he's probably the best resource if you want to ask about a specific TV and model, because he's the one who measures all this stuff and talks about it. He's like, yeah, from this year to this year, they decided to start looking at Max CLL instead of mastering monitor, and he's the one who seems to really be on top of all that stuff.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
So Brendan is using a JVC RS540, which is the same as the X790 with 100. Excuse me. Excuse me again.
He's getting there. It's almost done. All right.
There we go. He's got a 106-inch silver ticket screen and an Xbox One X with as his Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Would it be worth his while to buy a Panasonic UB820? I gotta go get something to drink.
All right. Well, if you heard Richard Gunther's answer from last week, he would tell you yes, because he is not a fan of just the software and interface in general of the Xbox One X. But in terms of actual, like, the quality of the playback, there's some justification here. I mean, if you're more looking for an excuse and justification, I can perhaps give it to you, because JVC has actually worked quite closely with Panasonic in recent times, so that if you tell the Panasonic UB820 to use its built-in, what do they call it? HDR optimizer, right? Which is essentially doing some tone mapping inside of the UB820 Ultra HD Blu-ray player before it is sent to your display, where it is then tone mapped again. You need to keep that in mind, but it's doing some tone mapping beforehand. And JVC has basically worked with Panasonic to say, if you tone map everything to one of the settings given, that the JVC will work well with that. Sony also, they've set up their projectors to work extremely well with 1000 nit, as the metadata saying either Max CLL or the mastering display is 1000 nit, and the Panasonic can do that. So you can have some justification there, but of course that only applies to discs, right? That is the only thing it applies to, is physical discs. So if that's what you watch is 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, then yeah, you can maybe justify it with the 820. It does have that ability to give a retone mapped signal to the display that the JVC will then handle really nicely.
Yeah, what he said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually having like some PTSD about talking right now. Holy moly. That just like went, I don't know what happened. The last little sip of coffee just kind of struck me wrong.
Yeah, wrong pipe.
All right, I have water now, so we should be good. John on Twitter. John recently replaced his 5 energy reference connoisseur speakers with MK Sound LCR 950s and SUR 95Ts. I don't know what those are. Anyways, he's got some
95 tripoles. You know, MK Sound and their tripoles.
I do love those tripoles. So he's got some 4-inch Roxol panels as first reflection points and carpet on the floor. He's powering a system with the Marantz SR6011 and an Outlaw Model 5000 amp. You're going to meet our other friend who needs one, I guess, apparently. He's tried listening to his new MK Sound speakers, both with and without Odyssey. He got a headache after 30 minutes or so in either case. He says he likes the added dynamics, but getting these headaches obviously won't do. Is there something that needs to be adjusted, or is this just something inherent to MK Sound speakers? So he's got first reflection points, but I'm guessing that's it.
That's what he described. I mean, that's all that
so
was
because
mentioned.
if he's going to tell us that the first reflection points he's got something, then he would tell us if he's got other things.
I would imagine.
So what could be causing headaches? Anytime you think of headaches, you think of one of two things. You think of basically reflections or around the room where it's coming in at you from different angles all at the same time, so your brain's a little confused, so which makes your ears tired, which makes you, not your ears, but kind of makes your brain get a little fuzzy.
Yes.
Fatigue. Or you think of distortion.
Yes.
So it's one of those two things. Those are the two things that I think of whenever somebody says, and the same thing with the guy who's complaining about the speaker sounding shouty, same sort of thing. So to me, it's going to be one of those two things. So if your room is treated or more than what you're saying, then I would worry about, did he say how far away he's sitting? He did not say that.
I didn't catch that, no. But I mean, these aren't the top of the line MK Sounds. These are the THX Select certified ones. And I will tell you, I'm no fan of the tweeter they use at MK Sound. It is not an expensive tweeter. It's the reason they actually need 3 of them stacked on each other to hit THX Ultra certification, which, by the way, THX Ultra isn't that like massive of a certification.
They just have to go down to 80 hertz. It's just a be able to hit reference level down to 80 hertz and then up to whatever.
But
their
at a given
level is.
distance, and THX Ultra is not that large. They talk about it in terms of room size, and it's like 2,500 cubic feet, which isn't a gigantic room. So I'm not the biggest fan of that MK Sound tweeter. This is not MNK. MNK is gone. Miller and Kreisel is gone. This is the new.
That company actually went out of business, right?
Yeah.
And then they sold to somebody else, sold the name to somebody else, and now it's MK Sound.
You know, the designs look similar, and it's got MK stamped. In other words, MK Sound is not M and K. It is a different company. And I mean, the thing is, he went from Energy Reference Connoisseur, which are really good speakers. My personal opinion is that this is a downgrade. I don't consider this an upgrade at all. At best, it's a lateral move, and I really don't consider this series of MK Sound speakers to even be a lateral move. I would consider them a downgrade from the Energy Reference Connoisseur. That's my opinion, which I know nobody wants to hear that if you bought something and were expecting an improvement, but no, that's not where I would point you.
You know, you may have been listening to people on forums who talk about M&K as being this,
some kind of reference because they're used in a lot of studios. That's true.
They are, but so are a lot of crappy speakers for reasons. But older M&K is a completely different animal than the MK sound that exists today. So it may be that you just don't like these speakers, or these speakers are not fulfilling what you need. In which case, it's return them. Can you return them and go back to what you had before? Or if you can't, then it's time to start shopping for some new speakers.
Yep.
Probably. All right, Anthony. Anthony is following up with some more questions about the house he is building from the ground up in the Philippines for his two rows of recliners, 5 seats in each row, plus a counter and bar stools behind the second row. We suggested room dimensions of 27 by 19, but with a 12-foot ceiling height. He will have throughout the house. He does plan to have an acoustically transparent screen with a false wall, and his front row of seats will be his primary row. He was planning on 3 feet of space behind the false wall. Is 27 feet still long enough for the room?
Because I mentioned in passing 2 feet as the false wall. Just as like for the plans he has, he wants 3 feet of space behind that false wall. So does he need to increase the room dimensions?
I don't think so.
No, I mean, so I was going by 6 feet from the back wall to the bar stools, basically, which should be sufficient. And then the second row of recliners, the back
shrinks your screen size. That's all it does.
Well, it just moves you a foot forward. It moves you to a 12-foot viewing distance from the front row to the screen instead of a 13-foot viewing distance from the front row to the screen.
From acoustically, from the front where you're sitting in the room, for acoustics purposes, has not changed.
Nope.
You just moved that You can move that false wall like smack dab in the middle of the room if you really want to. You're just now you need a 65-inch projection screen and something that can hit that from 6 feet away or whatever.
Yeah,
that doesn't matter.
So I mean, to me, a 12-foot viewing distance from your primary front row to the screen is perfectly reasonable. And given what he's going to say next about screen size and what kind of viewing distance or field of view that he'd like to attain, I think that's actually going to work out swimmingly. So I wouldn't change the dimensions.
So he says he prefers a large field of view. He was thinking of screen size in the range of 140 to 150. What distance should his distance be from eyes to screen end up being? Well, I don't know what a large field of view means.
I know.
Exactly.
That's tough to say. In my head, that's larger than a 45-degree field of view because that's what I consider really nice for me. That's what I want.
That doesn't mean anything. He could normally sit in the back of a movie theater and say, well, this has got to be bigger.
Right.
So, but I think the first thing that comes to my mind is most projectors have a hard time getting really bright and good images at larger than 135-inch diagonal.
Right.
So if first of all, we've said it about a bajillion times, but let me say it again. Go to the movie theaters, sit where you want to sit for your large field of view, count the ceiling tiles from where you're sitting to the screen, and then count when the movie starts and you can see the width of the screen, count the ceiling tiles across that. And then that's what field of view you like.
Yeah.
And then we can, that ratio, then we can tell you what exactly it is. But I don't think you should go bigger than 135 inches for projector considerations. And then you can just move the wall front to back, or more forward if you want it to be a larger field of view, because again, acoustically, it doesn't matter.
Right.
you're just now moving. That's one of the advantages of having an acoustically transparent screen and
Oh,
the
yes.
false wall up front is you can put everything behind the front false wall. You can't see anything. It looks really clean. And then if you're like, I have a projector that can do this, and I want this field of view. Well, just move your false wall forward by, a foot or whatever.
So, I mean, I will say this actually might work out perfectly well, because if you do stick with the 135-inch screen size and now you're 12 feet away instead of 13 feet away, that is a 45-degree field of view, which is exactly what I would want. I consider that a large field of view. That's what I want for CinemaScope is 45-degree field of view, but some people want even larger. If you did go with the 150-inch size from 12 feet away, now that's getting you a slightly more than a 50-degree field of view. For me, that's too big. I have to start moving my eyes and my head to actually see the sides of the screen, but some people really like that. But the point is, you wouldn't need to go any larger than 150. To me, that's the cutoff point for anything I would consider a normal home projector. It's not quite bright enough to really give you a full HDR effect at 150. 135 is like the cutoff for a decent HDR
135
effect.
and then move the screen
and
forward.
then move the screen a little forward if it's not big enough for you. I can get behind that for sure.
Yeah. We agreed that a 7.4.6 configuration using multiple side surround speakers. How many side surround speakers on each side do we think he should have, and how should he wire them to his AV receiver? 2, one for each row of seats, because 2 rows of seats, right?
Yeah,
the
2 rows of seats plus the bar stools. But I mean, I would have
well.
2 side surround speakers on each side wall, so 4 side surround speakers total, and I would have them just slightly behind the front row of recliners and just slightly behind the back row of recliners, which will actually probably put them directly to the sides of the bar stools. And I wouldn't have a third side surround speaker just for the bar stool row. No. 2 on each side will be fine.
You're going to wire them in series, so it's going to be red. So red to your first surround speaker, and then the black out from your first surround speaker to the red of the second surround speaker, and then the black of the second surround speaker back to the black of the AV receiver.
That's right.
On the one side. And then you can do the same thing on the other side.
Yep, that's all you'd have to do. And you wouldn't even really have to worry about it. I'm going to be recommending some pretty efficient speakers when we get to that part of things. So do we agree with 7.4.6? I mean, this is a large room, and he's got the space to plan this out. So should he go 7.4 or 0.6 or something else?
I don't like it.
You'd stop at 7.2.4?
Well, yeah, 7.2.4, yeah. I would. And the reason is you can put the top fronts and the top rears in front of your front seats and behind your back seats, but sort of close to those seats. And it gives you that whole thing. Unless you really think that you only care about that first row of seats, in which case you could put top middles above that, and then then the top rears behind the back seats and the top fronts way in the front.
I mean, what I would maybe say to you is I have zero problem with you pre-wiring for the 6 overheads, because why the heck not? Well, this room is under construction. By all means, run the speaker wire, but I wouldn't necessarily have it in mind that I must have 6 overheads. I would probably pre-wire it, but then try just top fronts, top rears. And if you're like, I would like to have this third pair of overhead speakers, okay, at that point, you've already pre-wired for it. Fine. It's not a big deal. I mean, I'm all for 4 subwoofers if you can afford it. 1 in each corner. Why the heck not? You got 3 rows of seats and wide seating area. That'll be as uniform as you can possibly get it. So to me, that's just a budgetary thing, because I certainly have nothing against 4 subs. It's not necessarily needed if the budget has to be spent elsewhere. Certainly have at least 2 though.
27 by 19 by 12. Okay.
It's a big room.
It's a big room. He's got a budget of $20,000 to cover all of the speakers, subwoofers, and a projector, although he already owns 1 pair of SVS PB12 Plus subs, which he could either use or sell. Before digging into gear options, the Philippines uses 220-volt outlets. Will it even be possible to use his PB12 Plus subs? Would it be safe to connect them to a voltage transformer? Most subwoofers that are amplifiers, and you'll have to look on the back here. There's a switch that you can switch from 120 to 220 or whatever it is, or 60 or 50 or whatever.
I did come across a mention though, and it actually was because this is the PB12 Plus, not the PB 3000 series that we would be up to now.
Is that 12 plus?
The 3000s replaced the pluses. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I did see mention that somebody was asking a very similar question, moving someplace that's 240 volt service, and SVS said they will actually just swap the amplifier.
There you
So
go.
they'll give you a 240 volt amplifier instead of your current 120 volt amplifier, and to just do things that way. So it seems entirely possible. They definitely do sell their subs all over the world, and they'll give you, or they'll have the hardware option of swapping out for the proper amplifier. Are they large enough for this room size? I mean, yes.
It's right there.
It's on the borderline, but
yeah.
yes. And if you had four of them in each corner,
if the 3000s replace these, and you said I was going to buy a PP 3000 or whatever it's called,
right.
For this room, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's you could not get away with the 2000. 2000 is not big enough for this room. A 4000 would crush it,
right? Because we're talking 6,000 cubic feet.
Yeah, it's a big room.
It's a big room.
But I think that this is especially if you're thinking about getting 2 additional subs to go in here. I think that you would be fine with these, and then 2 more 3000s. Yeah. Basically.
I mean, well, we'll get to it when he's talking about what we could buy. So there. Yeah, coming up next.
So which speaker subs and projector would we suggest for the setup? One thing to be aware of that he wants all of his surround and surround back speakers to be on walls, because most walls in the Philippines are constructed using hollow block and or cement, making in-wall speakers impossible. He'd like an in-ceiling speakers for Atmos, though. So is he buying all this gear before he leaves for the Philippines?
I think he's just enjoying planning. I believe that's really the case, is that he's enjoying planning all of this. But
that's
yes, he probably will
get
purchase things before he goes, because more stuff available in the United States, right?
That's true, and the shipping has got to be
right.
I mean, if he's got especially if he's moving out there and he's got a company that's moving him out there, then it's going to be cheaper just to shove it in the container with everything else than it's going to be to actually ship it. So let's see here. So he wants on-wall speakers.
For at least the
surrounds.
For the surrounds and the surround backs. That's right.
So who makes good on-walls?
And he needs something that can play pretty darn loud, because I'm in a 19-foot wide room, and his surround back speakers are going to be a good distance behind him with a 27-foot long room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So. Jeez. I almost want to say, something horn loaded, but I really don't.
Well, I mean, I'll jump in here and say that I actually think if you were to say sell your PB12 pluses, because maybe you don't want to deal with conversion, or you just want something that's even a bit higher output and will fit within this. So I'm going to talk about Power Sound Audio again, because actually Power Sound Audio, right on their website, they say all of our subwoofers, the amplifiers we use, are universal power supply. Plug it into 120, plug it into 240. They don't care. They're already ready to go with either voltage. So that's one thing that makes it easy. And actually, I can go right back to that V1510 that we already talked about earlier, which has the output level. It's a little bit more than your PB12 Plus. It's right about even with the current 3000 series. And that would be reasonable. 4 of those you could get V1510s from Power Sound Audio, and it will already work. But their speakers, because Power Sound Audio does sell speakers, and they use a compression tweeter in there. And aside from the very capable front speakers that you could get from them, they do also have speakers that are completely designed to be mounted on your walls as surround speakers, still with a compression tweeter in them, and a little bit of a wedge design. They look very reminiscent of what you would find in a full-size commercial movie theater. So he's talking about having 2 side surround speakers on each side wall, plus 2 surround backs, so 6 there, plus another 3 up front of the main speakers. If you got that with 4 of the V1510 subwoofers, all of that together, 9 speakers, 4 subwoofers from Power Sound Audio, shipping included, would be $10,575. I mean, that's a pretty penny, but this is the type of efficiency and output capability in these speakers that you actually wouldn't even need a separate amp for these. These, even in your room size, can be quite easily powered to full reference volume with 100 watts. Quite easily. So that's one reason why I like them, because I could point you to some of my other favorites, like Ascend Acoustics would be something that I might be able to point you to. And even though they look smaller and they're not as efficient, they have enough power handling that they could do it, but you would for sure need external amplification. Now you'd need that maybe full 400 watts that they actually can absorb in the Ascend Acoustics, but you're not going to get that from an AV receiver. Whereas the Power Sound Audios, you don't even need an external amp. They're so efficient. And then on top of that, you got this 12-foot ceiling. I'd point you to some Klipsch in-ceilings because Power Sound Audio doesn't make in-ceiling speakers. But I point you to some Klipsch in-ceilings. Again, nice and efficient. You can get 6 of them if you want to go 6 right away for about $1,500 for ones that would match the type of output as the Power Sound Audios. So he gave some in his email figures. He's like, this is the kind of budget I have for speakers, the budget I have for subs, the budget I have for my projector. But I'm like, no, put it all together into one pot and spend appropriately. Don't think I have to limit myself to this. But because he budgeted like $10,000 for subs, leaving himself only $4,000 for the projector. And I'm like, no, I want you to spend like $6,000 to $8,000 on your projector and maybe save a little bit of money on the speakers. You know.
So what on walls did you suggest?
The on walls or the Power Sound Audios. They're a little bit of a. Yeah.
110
surround 110 S's, yeah.
So it looks a lot like the what you call it?
Like Prime Elevations a little bit,
elevators,
except that these are considerably wider and bigger than Prime Elevations.
Are they?
Oh yeah, that's like an 8-inch woofer in there, and then a compression tweeter.
Where's the specs on this thing?
You go to like the components of the performance in there, but I mean that's kind of where I'm looking. I mean, you could certainly look at like if you had a combination of Ascend Acoustics and Aperion, go Aperion for the in ceilings because they would play very nicely with the Ascend Acoustic speakers. But all of those, they'd be capable, but you'd need the external amplification. So he also asked what projector he'd like to get in here, and I'm like, get a JVC and go for one of their genuine 4K models. I see no reason not to. You could go for the NX5. That's a $6,000 genuine 4K projector. It does have just enough lumens. I mean, certainly has enough lumens to light up your 135-inch screen if you go with that. Just enough to light up your 150, but maybe not for full HDR impact. But you actually have the budget. You might be able to go all the way up to the NX7, which would be tremendous. So instead of limiting your projector budget to only $4,000, I'm like, nah, get yourself a JVC and get a genuine 4K. There's no reason not to.
All right, so I'm going to recommend the SV661W or WR, depending on how much money you want to spend.
RBH?
On walls, the RBHs.
Okay.
Those are 90 watts efficient. So yours were 94?
Yeah.
These are 90. So, and then they have 2 different models. They have the W and the WR. The W is more expensive. They're $900 each. Yours are $650 or something like that, right? Is that right? $650? Something like that.
Something in that range, yeah.
$675. Okay. So close. So they're a little bit more expensive, $125 more. Mm-hmm. They're MTM design. So, mid-range, tweeter mid-range. They can play down to 55 hertz. So you plenty of extension down to 80 hertz. You can put them all the way around you. And then you've got the option of going for the R version, which is the reference or whatever the R stands for, which has a planar tweeter in there.
Oh, okay.
Rather than the silk dome.
The folded ribbon tweeter in the R version, the reference.
These also
version.
come in white if you're caring about
Certainly
that.
Not behind his projection screen, but
you're not going to care
on the
about
walls,
that,
perhaps.
But yeah. So
yeah, I can dig that RBH for sure. I can dig that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to recommend for speakers. Everything else I wasn't listening to, but the projector, what Rob said, was fine.
So I mean, if you spent more on the RBH speakers, then maybe you just keep the subs you already have, and that's how you get your budget back in line without having to downgrade on the projector.
Yeah, I would not downgrade on the projector.
No, not for this. This is like a master plan that you're going from the ground up. This is not time to skimp on the projector.
And then quite literally, any in-ceiling speakers will be fine. Though RBH makes lots of in-ceiling speakers you could choose from. So I don't know if they have 6 of them for $1,500, but whatever. So is there any receiver besides a Denon X8500H to even consider? Yeah, the turn off. Consider that. You can't afford it.
Not even close to the price.
That's the consideration. That's the only other one that can do 6 overheads if you're really. But if you're not dedicated to the whole 6 overhead thing, then
right. And
then
that's where I really think, because I mean, not only that, you could actually go for, let's say you're still planning to not have any external amps, so you go for the 6500H or the forthcoming 6600H. By the time he's actually ready to buy, will probably be up to the 67 or 68, because this might be 2 years in the future. But you look at that 6000 series, has 11 amplifiers built into it. So it can power a full 7.1.4 configuration all by itself. Still don't need external amps. You could go for that, which is like half the price of the 8500H. And if you decide in the future you really want those 6 overheads, I know it's crazy, but you add 2 more receivers to your setup to matrix out the top middle. I mean, it would still be considerably cheaper than the X8500H is what I'm saying. Yeah. So going back to, I think, start with the 4 and see if that'll work for you.
Yeah. Jay is hoping to put together a 3.1 sound system for his mother. She has some hearing loss, so maximum clarity, especially for dialogue and voices, is the goal. She also wants it to be visually unobtrusive. How does she feel about lamps?
I don't know if that'll match up on the sound quality side of things, though.
Any speakers will be mounted beside or below her TV. The room is roughly 10 by 20 by 7.5. There's a thick carpeting and drapes. Jay wouldn't expect any further changes to the acoustics. Well, therein lies your problem, but go on. He came across the Canton on-wall speakers, which he thought looked nice with their white finish, and their price of $400 a pair is about right. But doesn't really know anything else about them. So what might we recommend? I would recommend you figuring out a way to put some acoustic treatments behind this woman's head. That's 100% the first thing I would do.
I'm betting she's sitting in the 10-foot dimension as the front to back and has the seat right against the back wall, because most people do.
That's the same problem I have with my parents. And they sit on the back wall. Their speakers are not optimally placed, and they're dealing with, we can't hear we can't understand the dialogue, so we have the closed captioning on all the time. So the first thing you have to do is figure out a way to get some room treatments, something behind her head to counteract.
Even if it's more drapes, I mean, something. If you can get some thick, heavy drapes,
just put something behind the freaking drapes. That's what I say. If there's drapes back there, just put something back there so that it
freestanding panel.
That's the number one thing you can do. And then I think the Cantons are probably fine. I've been hit or miss with Cantons as far as my experience was with them. Some of them have been really good. Some of them have been a little shrill, but it depends on which model you're getting. If you think they look nice, that's fine. I would also suggest something like a Yamaha soundbar, one of their sound projectors, but that's going to be those $400 a pair. A pair. You're gonna have a hard time getting a good Yamaha soundbar for $400.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with this. I'm also okay. There's KEF options that are out there.
Yes. And actually, I want to point you, again, Richard Gunther last week, this is what I recommended to him, because it was a similar situation. They wanted something very unobtrusive, but still very good sounding. And the HTF 8003, I mean, it looks like a soundbar, but this is actually just 3 passive speakers inside of one case. It has speaker binding posts on the back. You still connect it to a traditional AV receiver. But I mean, this is an excellent sounding speaker bar that I will heartily recommend. And to get the price where you want it, they sell it at Accessories for Less for $550 right now. Normally goes for $800, which would probably be a bit too expensive. But $550 for the HTF 8003. I mean, if you want to go directly from KEF and not go Accessories for Less, there is the smaller HTF 7003, but that thing will, I mean, they claim it plays down to 120 hertz. It's really about 200. I mean, it's a much smaller unit with only 2-inch drivers.
Right.
Plus tweeters. So that HTF.
But if dialogue's all you really care about, then, this KEF would be a good option.
Oh, yeah, because it actually has a dedicated center that's in there that you can adjust independent. So I really like that as the solution here, to be honest. Now, you could also consider going sound bar. If you did, I'd want you to get one that genuinely has a center speaker transducer, not one of the ones that's, a lot of them are 2-channel and they just give you the phantom center. And given that little bit of hearing loss here, you want to be able to boost that dialogue. So I can stand behind Sony's HT-Z9F.
Yeah.
That soundbar, it does have the dedicated middle speaker in there. Comes with the wireless subwoofer, of course, as well. And you can find it for right about $700. But don't forget, that includes the wireless sub. So it's not like you're getting nothing for the extra money there.
We got to say sub in air quotes.
I suppose. Base module. Yeah, it has a base module. Yeah.
Once you start getting up into that price point, $700, $800, $900, though, right. you start to looking at those Yamahas, I was saying the sound projectors.
Those start coming in there. I mean, I really like the KEF as the solution. That's the one I kind of want you to get.
Accessories for less, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Graham. Whenever Graham examines the frequency response graphs of various bookshelf speakers and their supposedly matching center speaker models, it seems to be a constant trait that the center speaker is not as good. I don't know how you can see that from the graphs, but let's go.
More wiggly, I guess.
Why are center speakers like this, and should he just get a third bookshelf speaker to use as a center instead? Well, let's answer the second question first.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, yes.
Yep, that was the original idea. The original idea was 3 speakers up front, 3 identical vertical speakers up front. That was the original idea. It's just people quickly realized, wait, where does my TV go?
Yeah, I completely disagree that you can look at a graph and say that a speaker is better or worse than another speaker. Because if that were the case, we would never do listening tests.
But maybe he just means they don't look identical, or the center never looks quite as linear, or something like that.
That might be true, but
right.
You can't look at a graph and know that. So I have met some very, very capable center speakers. In fact, many companies they sell an LCR, which is a left, right, or you lay it on its side and spin a tweeter sometimes, center. And there's nothing wrong with that speaker. That's a good solution for this. But when you lay it on its side, it is going to sound different, or at least it's going to measure slightly different than what it measures when it's vertical. It's just the way things work.
It's the reason why our favorite center speakers have a tweeter and mid-range driver vertically stacked in the middle and then maybe flanked by a couple of woofers on either side, as opposed to the very traditional woofer, tweeter, woofer, which should be vertical in a Dapolito array, but they just often turn that horizontal, and now you have a woofer beside a tweeter beside another woofer, and that does cause comb filtering issues and some lobing from side to side. And maybe those are the measurements he's looking at. Maybe he's looking at lobing measurements or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
But a lot of that can be mitigated by the design that we prefer, which is either a vertically aligned with the tweeter above a mid-range driver and then maybe flanked by woofers, or it could be concentric, like what KEF does. We have the tweeter right embedded in the middle of a mid-woofer, or it could just be offset with the tweeter raised above the woofers so that you're not getting the directly horizontal comb filtering effects.
All right, Monty. Monty just moved into his new house. It already has a whole house audio system installed. I'm sure it's fantastic, too. There's a 12-zone Phoenix Gold distribution amp, and each room has a volume control knob on the wall. Sounds pretty awesome. To input sound into the distribution amp, there are speaker wires that run to the living room where the TV is installed. There's speaker wires to go to the amp.
Yup. So it's a speaker wire connection, not a line level connection. That's what feeds into the distribution amp. I'm not sure why, but that is the way of things.
What amp does that? What amp does that?
Some do.
This one does, apparently.
This one does.
He currently owns a Marantz Slimline NR 1608 receiver, and he can assign its surround back height speaker binding post to zone 2 outputs, but it will only send 2-channel analog inputs to zone 2. Obviously, no digital sources of any kind. And furthermore, he would like to have Atmos in the living room, as it already has 4 in-ceiling speakers in the appropriate positions. He would like to have 5.1.4 in the living room, plus be able to feed zone 2. I kind of lost the track with that one, but I'll figure it out. Yeah. He likes Marantz and would prefer to stick with them. Is there a receiver model that can do 5.1.4 in the main room while passing digital audio sources to a pair of zone 2 binding posts? No, nobody can do that. Yeah,
you can, because that's 11 speakers total.
I'm sorry. Digital audio source. Okay, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Pass a digital audio, it's still going to be 2-channel.
It's still going to be 2-channel, but it could be 2-channel digital audio source being input.
So the newer, higher level Marantzes should be able to do that, no problem, right?
Well, only one. The 8012 is the only one that can do it, because even though they have other models that can process 11 speakers and could do this if you were using the zone 2 pre-outs plus powering 5.1.4 itself in the main zone, in order to use zone 2 binding posts, in addition to playing 5.1.4 in the main room, it has to be one that actually has 11 amps built in. And the only one in Marantz's lineup is the SR8012. Now, that would make me say to you, because of how expensive that model is, go to the sister company of Denon. I know the exterior aesthetics might not look quite as nice, but you can get the 6400H or the 6500H for a considerably lower price than the Marantz 8012, and that also has 11 amps built in and can do this.
So he says, would it be easier to just have a second AV receiver that does nothing but feed the distribution amp?
Yup.
I mean, yeah.
Yes.
Compared to if you're gonna stick with Marantz, then yes.
And not only that, you could still use your main Atmos receiver to feed the second receiver via its Zone 2 pre-outs instead. So if you're worried about, the sources I have plugged into my Atmos receiver, maybe I want to distribute those, you can still do that.
Slimline doesn't do Atmos, though, does it?
Well, I mean, there are Slimlines that do 5.1.2.
Right.
But nothing that does 5.1.4.
Yeah. So you could keep your Slimline to do the distribution amp.
Oh, as the distribution amp, yeah, for sure. Because
then buy a new receiver for your main zone.
Since his distribution amp is an amp, you don't need a lot of wattage coming out of the AV receiver that's feeding it. You just need something that'll send out a speaker level signal. So yeah, keep your
That's
Slimline.
so goofy.
That's
why do they
2.
do that? Why don't they just?
Know.
First of all, why did anybody make this stupid thing? And second, why did they install it here? It's just, I swear they do it just to mess with people. So he has a Harmony remote. How easy will it be to control both the main room and Zone 2 using the Harmony? If you get two separate receivers
very
that
easy.
that are both Marantz, though.
But you can still use the Harmony hub with its precision IR, so that it's only sending commands.
That's where it would end up becoming not an issue, but something that you would have to think about. If you got two different brands, then it's as easy as saying the main zone is a Denon and the distribution amp is a Marantz, and blah.
Well, I don't know. Denon and Marantz might share commands.
You make a good point. That is true.
I think they very well. If it was a Yamaha and your Marantz, or an Onkyo and your Marantz, or something like that.
Right? Yeah.
But even if you had two Marantzes, which we know would share remote commands, you can still do this with your Harmony hub because it does have that little precision IR output, and then you can tell it the ones using the precision IR only controls this one AV receiver, and your Harmony hub can totally do that. So actually, even more reason to go with the two receiver solution.
Yeah. So he's considered using Raspberry Pi to run Kodi. He'd like to be able to control his digital music collection from his phone. Any thoughts? Yeah, I don't know how to make that work going.
I mean, there are a gazillion ways to kind of do what you want to do. I mean, you could. If you're just like, this is what I want to do as a project, okay, it'll do it. Great. But
Raspberry Pi will do just about anything if you know what you're doing. I mean, it's just basically a processor and whatever else you have in there. So Raspberry Pi can do almost anything. The question is, how much of it do you want to do yourself?
Right.
And how much do you want to have to fiddle with the dang thing?
Because it's just going to be one of your sources that's plugged into your AV receiver that's now feeding your distribution app. So any number of things could do. I mean, you could, if you're using Apple products as your phones, you could do this directly with AirPlay without needing to do anything else. Or if you're on Android, you could do this through a Chromecast, without anything else. So it isn't
until they stop supporting Chromecast for some real.
It isn't necessary to do this with a Raspberry Pi and Kodi. I mean, you could do something in Plex. You could do this directly through Hios because you could have a hard drive plugged into the USB input of your new AV receiver, and that'll stream directly off of that, and you can send it to any Hios device, which your Marantz Slimline probably already is. So there are a multitude of ways to do this without necessarily buying anything else. But if what you want to do,
I would check that Marantz thing that he just said about Hios.
Yeah, because the older ones wouldn't have it. I don't know how old your Slimline is. The new ones have it built in. The older ones don't.
So he's got a separate room that he plans to turn into a dedicated theater. It's 19 by 17 and a half by 9, so roughly 3,000 cubic feet. He already owns a SVS PC2000 sub. He plans to have dual subwoofers for this dedicated theater. Is the PC2000 sufficient for this room size? Can he just buy a second PC2000, or should he sell the one he has and put the funds towards a pair of higher output subs? Again, this is like right there. I think that the PC2000
3,000 cubic feet. That's doable for a 2000 series, ported 2000 series.
I feel this is you have a good subwoofer for your space. Yeah, this was not overkill.
I don't see any. I grab a second PC 2000. I think you're laughing in 3,000 cubic feet. That's sufficient.
All right, let's do. I don't know, one, maybe two more. Let's see what we can get in here. Michael from Facebook. Michael picked up an Onkyo TXN NR686 from Gibby's, so he's in Canada. For the most part, setup went smoothly, but when he tries to use his Bell TV satellite box, a message pops up on the screen saying, "Cannot play this content." His NVIDIA Shield plays without any problems, and he tried outputting from the Onkyo to 3 different TVs: a 32-inch Philips from 2011, 32-inch RCA from 3 or 4 years ago, and a 20-inch Sharp. Got a bunch of small TVs just lying around. Michael is visually impaired, so he's relying on his wife's help to set things up. He says the Bell TV box has 4K printed on it. Please tell him he doesn't need a new TV on top of all of this. This doesn't sound like a new TV issue. This sounds like a resolution issue or a format issue, like
resolution
some sort of
plus HDCP, unfortunately.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this, unfortunately, is a bit of a known issue with Aris, which is what took over Motorola branded cable and satellite TV boxes. The 4K, which he says his is, Aris boxes, which is what Bell uses. And this goes all the way back to 2016, and they have said there should be a fix coming, and, well, we're still waiting. Unfortunately, when the box, the cable, the Bell box, is plugged into a device like your new 686 that handles HDCP 2.2, it says, well, that's what we're using. It doesn't seem to have the ability to look farther down the signal chain and say, well, at the other end of this is a TV that is only HDMI or HDCP 1.4, which these televisions all sound like TVs that would definitely not be HDCP 2.2. None of these are 4K TVs. And so, unfortunately, it sends out an HDCP 2.2 handshake to the AV receiver, which the AV receiver can handle, but then the AV receiver says, I'm connected to a non-HDCP 2.2 television, so I can't pass along this content. And there doesn't seem to be a fix. The only solution right now is you plug your Bell box directly into one of the HDMI inputs on your television. It will work with that because it's not connected to any HDCP 2.2 device in between.
And you use ARC.
And then you use ARC or an optical audio cable to feed the audio back to your AV receiver. Unfortunately, it's the only solution.
It's not the only solution. I mean, you could use one of those boxes.
One of the boxes that converts HDCP 2.2 to HDCP 1.4. Yes, you could do that. Monoprice sells them as well, HDCP converters. So yeah, you could use that.
So how does he manually adjust the EQ settings on the Onkyo 686? He'd like a little bit more treble. Onkyo is one of the few receivers they tend to have tone controls, don't they? I mean... Oh,
almost everybody still has tone controls. There's just treble and bass.
I don't remember the last time I saw a tone control on a receiver.
Oh, they're in there.
Maybe, I would have to go looking for them, I guess.
Well, a couple ways to do it. So directly, if what you really want to do is adjust the EQ, and you can. So there's the little gear icon. So right where your left, right, up, down arrows are with enter in the middle, to the bottom left of that, there's a little teeny tiny gear icon, and that's what brings up your setup menu. So from there, you'd select number 2, which is labeled speakers. And then under speakers, you'd select 6, which is called equalizer settings. And from there, you choose which pair of speakers you want to re-equalize, your fronts, your center, your surround. And then you use left and right to choose a frequency, and they're preset. You only have a selection of 9 frequencies. You don't get to, randomly choose whatever frequency you want. And then use up and down to boost or cut that given frequency.
That's not like a tone control, though.
No, that's a graphic equalizer. That's what that is. Graphic. So they do also have a traditional tone control. There is a quick menu button on the Onkyos. It's to the upper left of your up, down, left, right arrows and the enter key in the middle. Upper left, there's a Q button. All it says is Q on it. Brings up your quick menu. One of the options, the first one, is tone controls, treble and bass. Boost and cut your treble and bass.
That's what I would do if I were him.
That's it. Oh, yeah. I would start with the tone control and just boost your treble a little bit.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan. Jonathan started looking into the topic of room acoustics as we discussed his theater, the CDIN.
He's intercapped it now. He even intercapped it in his email. He's like, it's the C-Den.
Because he's a Seattle
Seahawks fan. That's right.
Anyways, he's feeling a little overwhelmed. There is a book, or is there a book, a guide, or a course that we recommend so he'll feel like he truly understands what all the graphs and measurements are showing. He's reading about auto calibration, room EQ wizard, mini DSP, sound waves, phase, acoustic treatments, and so on. Certainly seems like a rabbit hole. So before he's led astray, what's a good resource for getting a firm grasp and understanding of the basics? So there's the what's his name's book, the Master Acoustics, whatever it is. It's the big one.
So that would be Floyd Tools, or are you talking about Floyd Tools? So it's called Sound Reproduction: The Acoustics and Psychoacoustics of Loudspeakers and Rooms.
That will probably not help you because I mean, it will if you can digest it. It's like a textbook. I mean, it's a
textbook, but I mean, they start with the basics. He starts with the basics in that, but maybe you don't get past the first 5 chapters. Maybe that's the case because it gets into this heady stuff. They're up to their 3rd edition now, but absolutely, I mean, it's Floyd. I mean, when they say Floyd Toole wrote the book on acoustics, this is the book they're talking about, Sound Reproduction. I would also point you to the Master Handbook of Acoustics. That is another one that you could look at. That's by F.
I mean, there's so many online. I mean, you could go to Audioholics, or they have plenty of articles over there.
Sure.
Gick Acoustics is going to have tons.
Yeah, Gick Acoustics. I was going to mention their articles.
What's his name? Oh, the Weiner guy. Anything that he writes, if it's got his name on it, I would not read it. I mean, you could read it, but I would.
I mean, his information is good. We for other very different reasons don't recommend.
Various sundry reasons. I mean,
people are going to be asking. Most people have never heard of. Oh God, I don't want to get into that can of worms.
But I mean, most of the times what he's saying is okay. It's like he has good information, and because of that, you should floor to ceiling everything. I'm like, okay, wait a second. Right. Hey, you made a little bit of a logical leap there that I missed a couple of steps in between. Oh, it's because you want to make a bunch of money. Got it.
But okay. I mean, when Jonathan is saying, is there like one place he can go to? Sound Reproduction by Floyd Toole, Master Handbook of Acoustics. Those are 2 easy resources. They're just books. You can read them at your leisure. You could also, this isn't about room acoustics so much, but the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook by Vance Dickinson is another one that you could. I mean, it'll be a ton of information about acoustics and sound waves and how it all works. And if you really want to understand how loudspeakers work, the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook. So if you're just online resources, stuff you can just browse through. Gick Acoustics does have a great series of articles, tons of stuff you can learn there. And I would also point you to soundproofingcompany.com, the soundproofing 101 section that they have. Lots of great information in there, including constructing rooms for soundproofing purposes, which is a topic that these other books don't necessarily get into. So that's tremendously beneficial as well. I think that gives him a darn good start. If you read and retain and comprehend all of that, you'll know more than I do. So yeah, you'll be in great stead.
All right, let's try one, maybe 2 more.
Perfect.
I need to get some lunch here. Andy recently moved to a new condo. His theater area is a living room plus kitchen combo that's roughly 15 feet front to back, 27 feet wide in total, with his living room theater taking up the right-hand side and open to the kitchen on the left. And it's 10 feet tall.
Yeah,
it's all hardwood, and the walls are flat and bare right now. He's got a 6 foot by 9 foot area rug in front of his seats, but that's as far as anything soft. Excuse me, at the moment.
Yep.
His 3 recliner seats aren't right against the back wall, but they're close. All right. He's got a Denon X3300W, a 65-inch LG C7 OLED, clips reference 2. Ooh. those are going to be loud in here. Clips reference 2 series speakers all around, including their upward firing Atmos modules at the front, and a single SVS PB2000 in the front right corner, which he's perfectly happy with since he only cares about his one seat. Everybody else can suck it. He's only a couple of feet off that back wall, it looks like.
Yeah, pretty much enough to allow the recline to fully happen. I mean, sometimes optical illusion, maybe it's 2.5, 3 feet or something like that, but relatively close to the wall behind his seats.
So dialogue intelligibility is the issue. He's reached out to Gick for their free advice, so he'll find out what they suggest. But with his budget of about $700, what would we recommend? He's thinking, based on previous advice, that his top priority should be 2 or 3 panels on his back wall directly behind his head. Do we agree? And then what else? So the wall behind him is 100% bare. There's nothing back there.
Yeah.
I don't know. These seats are hard to judge. They look like they have a headrest on it that's quite high, but it could, again, be optical illusion, and he could be sitting above there. So he could be getting some absorption from the seat itself.
It's a leather seat, though, so it's not going to be absorbing much.
It's not going to be a ton. So I agree. I think you need that first reflection point on whatever I guess it's the right wall.
The right side wall. And I mean, I would imagine we can see there's, sort of light coming in there on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And this is a setup where it's over to the right side. I would imagine that's a window or a balcony door. We can't see it in the photos, but that's what I would expect is over to the right-hand side. So maybe it has to be a freestanding panel, which is fine.
That's fine.
You can get yourself a freestanding panel. Yeah. But yeah, you'd want some absorption on the right-hand side of your room because it's open on the left. So to make the reflected energy you're basically getting, you're getting some, but very little reflected energy to your left that's open to your kitchen. You'd want to try and equal that with some absorption on the right-hand side.
Right.
I fully agree. Do that back wall first, though. That back wall is number one culprit. Yep.
And that right wall, if you can't, I get the thick panel you can reasonably put over there. So if you can get a 4-inch panel over there, I would definitely do that because you're trying to make it sound as similar to an empty space, which is what is on the other side. Yeah. So there's that. And then it's just a matter of as much absorption as you can put in this room. So
yeah, because you pretty much can't have too much in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This question is really long. Oh, no, Jim. It's not long. So Jim was reading Kef's How to Get the Most Out of Your Subwoofer Phase and Positioning article. And it includes some rules. And Rule 3 says that if for some reason you're forced to orient your subwoofer such that it is directly facing your main speakers, that automatically puts it out of phase with your mains. And you have to flip the polarity switch to 0 degrees.
Or to 180 from 0 degrees. Sorry, I didn't type that up correctly.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, Jim wants to know if this is correct. What is correct? Whatever. What?
Well, I have to do a little bit of sleuthing because prior to that, they're talking about how you want to have your subwoofer as close to your front speakers as possible. Which is also not a thing. But if that were the case, then they're saying for some reason you have to turn it around and have your sub facing the other way, which what if your sub is downward firing? But let's forget about that. Let's imagine it's only forward firing and its ports are also only forward firing, and then you turn it around so it faces the front wall while being right beside your front left and right speakers. Then, yeah, technically, now that is 180 degrees out of phase. Okay.
Technically. And it absolutely makes 0 difference.
It
but
still
whatever.
Doesn't matter.
Let me tell you something there, Jimmy. Out of all the places on the internet to get subwoofer advice, the absolute worst is AVS forums. But only slightly
That's not
less
necessarily
worse.
true. You just have to filter a lot. That's
you can't filter. Yeah, if you can filter it, then you don't need the advice. So there you go. The second worst place is any speaker manufacturer ever. I swear to God, they're good at making speakers. They don't know crap about subwoofers, and it just seems to be universally the case.
Heck, we don't even agree with all the articles on SVS, and they specialize in subwoofers.
They make subwoofers, and we're like, yeah, don't listen to them. So, especially don't listen to their stupid tool, right?
Yeah, don't use the subwoofer matching tool that asks you to name your speakers, and then they base
because
it on
all
that.
They're doing is looking at price points and saying, if you can afford $4,000 worth of speakers, you can afford $8,000 worth of subs. So we don't care that you're in a 10 by 11 foot bedroom. Right. You need 2 4,000 series subs.
That's what'll match your speakers.
That'll match those Martin Logans. That's. Don't listen.
It's not impossible that flipping your polarity switch might help you in any given subwoofer speaker room situation. If that's all you have is a polarity switch, sure, flick it to the other setting and see what happens.
Flick that switch.
No harm in trying it, but no, this as a rule, like I say, sleuthing back to all the things they said previously, almost none of which I agree with. And technically, yeah. If that's what you did, if you put your sub right next to your front speaker and it's forward firing and front ported and all the rest of it, and you turned it around, it is. They're both pushing out at the same time if the polarity switch is set to 0. So now one is pushing out towards the front wall and one is pushing out towards the back wall. By definition, that is out of phase. Okay.
Yeah, but they're not both playing the same thing.
I know.
It doesn't make any difference. So what position you put that switch if it's downward firing?
I know.
Then what?
Or you have a rear port and a front driver.
Or you have that Aperion one that's down firing with 2 side firing
passive radiators.
Radiators.
I know.
Then you have to take the X-Acto knife and split the switch into 3s.
Talking
bend it.
Frequencies where your ear will never have registered it until it's bounced off your wall and ceiling probably a couple of times.
Unless you're the dude with the 60-foot walls.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, no, don't listen to that, and don't think. You know what? I went through all the subwoofer setup advice that AVRant has ever given me, and by the measurements, by my ears, by the sweeps that I've listened to, it all sounds fantastic. But I have my polarity switch set at 0, and Kef told me to put it at 180, and when I do, everything goes wrong. But they said it's a rule. Nope, don't do it then.
Don't do it. Yeah. Not only that, if you listen to our advice and say, you've done this and that and everything else, and it still doesn't sound right, but if you switch that switch, suddenly it sounds right. But we told you not to. Flick the switch.
Yes,
that's fine. What sounds right is what sounds right. Our advice, is general rules and general knowledge and best practices. It's not absolute.
Definitely not.
We're never been the case that we thought that. People have bought speakers that either one of us has owned, headphones that either one of us has owned, and said we don't like them, and we're fine.
Absolutely.
And they also have said things like, we prefer the Golden Ear or the Klipsch or some other brand that we say has a sound compared to whatever else, or Bang & Olufsen compared to something that we've said is neutral and therefore is by definition better. And then we're like, fine, if you like it, it's fine. It's just what it is. We've also had people come on this podcast and say they've had 2 subwoofers at the front of the room. They're getting even the response across all seats. It's unlikely, but it seems to have worked in their case. So it is what it is. Don't worry about it. All right, Rob, who do we have left?
We have Ian E. Let's see. Was that all Ian? That is all Ian. All right. That's a whole lot of Ian. Andrew L. Corey W. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Josimar?
Sure.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, both of them wrote to us on Facebook. And Just Jay. He's also on the list. So we shall answer you next week.
All right. This is our podcast, AV Rant, that answers your home theater AV questions. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Question@avrant.com.
Somebody asked on Facebook.
I was going to say the same thing. They couldn't find an email address for us. I'm like, you have never listened to this podcast, you liar.
They said they're a big fan.
Big fan that has never heard the question@avrant.com?
Question@avrant. I don't know how that was missed, but question@avrant.com, that's our email address.
I'm sorry I called you a liar. I'm glad you're a fan. But at the same time, come on. You couldn't find an email address? Come on. All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
Are we going to thank our listeners of the week?
Oh, I forgot about them. Let's thank our listeners of the week.
You're out of practice, Tom. Out of practice.
Just
getting
2
back
weeks.
here. That's right.
Climbing a Moab. Give me a break, man. the big cloud of Colorado smoke it killed some of my brain cells.
Yep.
Let's thank our listeners of the week. Thank our PayPal donators, Stefan, Brandon, Brian, and Tim, as well as our 83 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, Stefan, Brandon, Brian, Tim, thank you very much for donating on PayPal. And thanks so much to our 83 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
Also thank Andy for talking us up to GIC and Thomas for talking us up to SVS and Gary Yakubian.
That's right. Andy, Thomas, thank you very much for the support. And glad you got to chat to those people. Always a good time.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Oh, that's all I have to do. Just to press pause and press stop on
That's it. Let's see if I can figure out how to stop streaming, because this is behind the scenes and we're still streaming away here. But it's because I have to open
30th,
things
right?
and do that. It is July 30th. Bye, everybody.
Later.